Oh, you want to see what we're doing in the 2D game class?
Simple menu.
Huh?
Was the music today?
No, we added the music last class.
Okay.
You missed 2 classes now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you even wearing a watch? He was like, oh.
Yeah. One of the teams back did a game kind of like it's a 2-person shooter game, but yeah, it looks kind of like that, and they used the armband thing to for all the actions.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so your question is, if I have an audio clip that lasts 30 seconds, at the end of the 30 seconds, can something happen? That's what you're asking. Okay. So actually, because I have an audio clip in here, let me actually explore that real quick in this code. The short answer is it should. This dot power up sound dot see what information I get about a sound. Length. Yeah, so you can ask a audio clip what its length is in seconds. So for instance, if you're about to play a clip, so let's say you have a clip called power up sound. Okay, like this. What I can go ahead and do is I can have a function here, private void go to next scene, and then do something in here. And then what you could do is right after you start playing the sound, I'm going to go ahead and this is the length of the sound. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, what's the function to do something in some amount of time? Invoke. I'm going to do invoke go to next scene, and then it wants to know in seconds how much time. Do it in that amount of time, and maybe you tack on 5 seconds or something like that. Some buffer, so that it'll call that in that many seconds plus 5. That way your audio doesn't get cut off. But something like that. So put your go to next scene logic in there, and then after you start playing your last sound, tell it to invoke that function name in the number of seconds equal to the length of your sound plus a buffer. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Let me just undo this. Let's get over to Van's issue. All right, so Van's issue is actually somewhat related to that issue, right? So let me just close these and let me reopen Unity, and then I'll tell you what I think you were asking, and then you'd make sure you tell me that's what you were asking, and then we'll answer that.
You mean my English is slappy?
I've gotten pretty good at figuring out what you mean, ish.
Yeah, I mean, turn on like toggle 5 objects, 1 by 1.
Yeah. All right, so what he wants to do is he has multiple beacons. Okay, so he has 4 or 5 different points of interest in his scene. And what he wants to do is he wants those guys to be there. So he's going to have them sitting on the ground at 5 different locations. But he wants all of them to be invisible except the first one.
Yes.
And once he reaches the first one, he wants the second one to become visible, and then the third one to become visible. But you want an algorithm for detecting what's the next one, correct? So the way I'd handle this, let me just create a third scene, because this is I don't want to lose this from what we did last time.
It's a very nice test scene.
Well, no, that represents 2.5 hours of work, so we're not going to lose that.
Yeah.
All right, so let me just I'll just create a new scene in here real quick. I think we spent about 2.5 hours on that problem.
Okay.
We solved some other stuff too, but yeah, just on that problem was a.
Yeah, just on that problem, we spent like 70 bucks on it.
Scene 3. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put a plane in here. Okay. And I'll go ahead and stretch this plane out. We'll do 10 by 10, something like that. And we've been doing the first person dealy, right? Okay. So let me throw that guy in there. Oh, that's my mini Legion stuff. Because if we have time tonight, I want to start introducing the next thing. I'm going to start transitioning us to the virtual reality stuff. My plan was to actually show you most of it tonight, but we ran out of time. And actually, we don't even have class next Thursday, do we?
No. Yes.
Yeah, but no, you shouldn't really be celebrating though. So you're only getting a half class tonight, right? You're getting no class next week.
Yes.
But your final project isn't due any later. Okay, so that means you're getting introduced to the virtual reality aspect of it 2 weeks too late. So it actually hurts you, and you're celebrating.
I'm not even close to that. Like, I need time to work on it.
Yeah. The good news for you though is the VR aspect of it isn't nearly as impactful as you think it is. It's just a new camera. What you might have to redo is how you interact with stuff a little bit, just because you're using hand controls. But that part's not that big of a deal.
I have a question. It's like, what's the requirement that we have to do for like you have a certain point that you have to done for first screen.
No, whole thing.
Just do anything.
Yeah, I should be able to do your entire experience in virtual reality. Yeah, it'll be okay. You'll be fine. Okay, so we'll use our first person guy in here for this one. So that's standard asset library. Is it characters? Where is it? Particle system, physics, prototype.
Okay. I think it's an editor.
I don't think it's an editor.
Character, yeah.
It's in character. First person, prefabs. All right, thank you. So we'll drop this guy in here. I want to have my. So here's just a little trick here I can show you, because sometimes it's hard to get your guy placed into the right place. Because right now I have my plane on the ground, and then I have my first person shooter guy. He's sitting on top of that, but actually I don't see the plane. If you go ahead and click on the camera aspect of your first person shooter, the guy that's inside of it, you get the little camera preview in here. With that, you can then. That's not what I expected. There we go. With that, you can, I was dragging him the wrong direction. With that, you can move the camera up and see when he finally sees ground. Otherwise, he's below the ground before that. That makes sense? Yeah. So that's kind of a good way to just get him initially oriented. Okay, so let me give some materials to this just so we can see the difference in color. Do I already have a couple of... I'll just do new materials out here. So I'll create a material, and let's make this material. Do we want, how about red ground and white beacons?
Yeah.
That sound good? All right, so there's our red ground. Okay, and then let's create a couple of beacons, and we're going to make these beacons some cubes.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll create a cube here, and we'll call this guy beacon. So that's beacon 1. Okay, y should be 0.5, and I'm going to create another material here and make this guy a white material. Even though I think it should be white by default, isn't it? There we go. He was below the surface. All right, so 1.5 has him. Oh, it's still. Whatever. All right, so we have that guy now on the ground. Let's go to our first person controller guy. Let's position him so we can see that first beacon. Okay, so that's going to be our first beacon, and we're just going to take him on a little line, right? Little trail.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's our second beacon. There's our third beacon. There's our fourth beacon. There, we'll have this one go over here. There's our fifth beacon. Okay, so there's our beacons. And by default, we want all of these beacons to be invisible except the first one. Okay, the way we're going to do this now, let me ask you a follow-up question. Do your beacons need to be reusable? Or after you've hit a beacon, are you never going to have to go back to it again?
Never go back to it.
Okay, so what I'm going to do here, and I actually think that there is...
Can we see it both ways?
We can. I'm actually going to show you a new thing. I might screw it up the first time I write it, but I'll get it fixed after that. I promise. So let me just create a new folder here for my scene 3, just so I can keep things somewhat organized. So I'll take that stuff. I'll throw it into my scene 3. I'll go ahead and create a script folder in here. Okay. And we're going to create a new script. Now, probably this is going to go as a scene manager. Okay. So I'm going to call this guy, we're going to create a new script. And we'll call this guy Scene 3 SM, Scene Manager. Okay, so actually I'm going to create an empty game object in here. Called Scene Manager, who's going to be in charge of all the crap that's happening in the scene. So it's going to be that dude that we're going to attach the script to. Okay, now I want him to know about the beacons. So what I'm actually going to do is, now I think I can do this with a, oh, I don't have that open yet. I'm actually going to create a public variable that is a collection. So I'm going to create a public variable that's an array to hold my beacons. And that's a good way to get more than one thing into your program at once. So I'm going to create a public variable. This would be a public game object array called the beacons. Okay, and I think I can do it just like that. Let's see. So now when I click on my scene manager, yeah, we see we have this this new dude for size, and I know that I have 5 beacons. So it gives me buckets for those 5 beacons, and I believe I can drop all of them in. Except I can't click on those first. Oh, maybe, can I not? I really thought I could do that.
I saw someone do it too, but couldn't figure it out.
I hover over this guy. This might be somewhat unimportant. So I guess I'll just drag the guys in there. There is a way to do it. I just don't know what the magic trick is. All right, so there's my beacons. It allows me to have a collection. Somewhere I'll find the video or something, but you can look it up. There is a way to grab a whole bunch of things and drop them in.
Apparently there's a lock up in the corner that you can like freeze it on that item, and then you can click on those.
Oh, this guy. Yeah, I think you're right. Here, should we just test it? After we've already dragged them all in there. How locked is this? Okay. Oh, is it not? Maybe you have to drop it onto the size.
No, do you have, is the array public?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so it actually just filled it in. So, okay, so what I need to do is I need to take this down to 0.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the default for it. Then I can take these guys, drop it onto the value, and it's set to this 5 with all the elements in it. All right, so yeah, that's what I've seen done before. Now you've seen the magic. All right, so we have an array. Now what we want to do is I'll go into my scene manager here. So right off the bat, we want to go through our array and turn all the things except bucket. Well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to initially turn the mesh render off for all of them. Okay, just every single one of them. So I'll go ahead. I'm going to say, what is it? So for each. What's the syntax for that? Game object G. Is it actually the word in? Yeah. This dot the beacons. G dot get component mesh renderer dot enabled is equal to false. Okay, so that will make the thing disappear. Actually, interesting question. Can I say G dot enabled? No. Okay. So that'll make them all disappear by default. Let me just test something here real quick. I'm gonna turn it off at first. So they should all be there initially. Oh. Probably need to make some things rigid bodies, and that guy's a rigid body, and we're going to freeze his position on Y. Where's Shramble? Has anybody seen him today? Tim?
Tim?
Other Tim.
I don't know. I didn't see him today. He on the bin list, probably without the enterprise.
I don't think he's on the dean's list.
Tim Martin, right?
Huh?
Tim Martin.
His name's Tim Schrammel.
Oh,
The guy who sits over here.
no.
Oh, he sits there in this class. He sits over there in a different class. All right. So let's see. I made that guy a rigid body. Then I need to make my first person controller. He's already a rigid body, so now he should fall onto that.
All Tim's looking like
Let me
I'm racist like that.
bring him up a little bit. There we go. I actually had him. He was not quite above the ground, so now he's above the ground. So we have all of our guys are there. So now let me enable that thing in the script to make sure they all disappear. Okay, they're all disappeared now. So now what we want to do is we want to show the next beacon, right? So really what we want to do is we want to treat this guy like it's a stack. In fact, what I'm going to do is just so we have that convenience, I'll go ahead and keep my collection of my beacons because you said you want to be able to hold on to them later on. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to give myself a private stack of game objects. And we're going to call this the beacon stack. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I'm going to instantiate that stack. And then I want to push all of my elements from my array onto that stack in reverse, such that the last thing I add is going to be the first thing that's going to come off. Okay. So that way I can basically say, keep popping off the stack and turn that guy on. Pop off the stack, turn that guy on. All right, so we'll go ahead and say this dot, the beacon stack is equal to a new stack of game objects, like that. Then we'll say, actually need to kind of go through these guys backwards. So what I'm actually going to do is there a step function in? Nah, doesn't matter. Let's just do it the old-fashioned way. Print I is equal to this dot the beacons dot length -1. I is greater than or equal to 0. I minus minus. All right. And then what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to go ahead and get the component there. So I'm going to do that for loop and what I want to do in this one all in the same. So inside here, I'll go ahead and say this dot the beacons at bucket I dot get component, blah, 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 turn it off. And then, because I'm walking through it backwards, so I'll turn them all off in reverse, but then I'm also going to go ahead and say this dot the beacon stack dot push. I'm going to push a game object in here. What game object? This dot the beacons at bucket I. All right. So now I have my collection of all my beacons in my array, but I've also pushed them onto the stack in the correct order. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, this is going to, probably the easiest way to handle this is going to be having when the dudes get hit, when the beacons get hit, they let the scene manager know that I've been hit. Okay, so every beacon knows about the scene manager. Yeah, so let's do that in a singleton, without a singleton. We'll do that in a direct kind of way. So what I'm actually going to do here So let me save this for a second. I'm going to go into my scene. I'm going to go, we're going to create a second script. We're going to call this our beacon script. This is what beacons do. This is their behavior. All right, so I'll select all my beacons here. And I'll go ahead and drag this script onto those guys. And then I need to give myself access to that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a public game object scene manager. So they all have access to that scene manager there. And then I'll go ahead and select all these dudes. And their script here is expecting a scene manager. So I'll go ahead and drag the scene manager in there. All right, so now they should all have access to that scene manager. Okay, so now we want those guys to have colliders associated with them. All right, so all of our beacons. We're going to go ahead and have a box collider on these guys. We're going to go ahead and make it a trigger because you actually don't want your dude to bump into the box. You want him to hit it and then the next one show up, right? So you don't want the box to be like a physical thing that keeps them from moving. You just want it to be a target.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to make these guys a trigger so that they don't have to be a target. So with that in mind, we actually could take the rigid body off of them. Okay, so if I, the advantage of having the rigid, well, we're actually fixing it on Y anyway, so I can come on here and I can remove the rigid body from that guy because he doesn't need to be one. We just want to know when he's hit. And we're going to go ahead and set him up as a trigger. So we're going to teach each of these boxes to do something when something collides with them. Specifically, we're going to make the first person controller dude here. We're going to set him up as the player. So he's tagged as the player. And then we're going to go into our beacon script. And then we're going to do the on trigger enter on this guy. And we'll ask if other dot tag is equal to player with a capital P. If that's the dude who bumped into me, then I want to set a message. I'm going to send a message up to my the scene manager, letting them know to show next beacon. Okay, so we're going to say this dot scene manager dot send message show next beacon. Now, if we want to be creative with it, we can actually send along an object with this. Okay, but now what we're going to do is we don't need to send the next beacon here. Actually, what we're going to say is when the player runs over us, let's turn ourselves off. Make sense? Let's turn our light off, then let the scene manager know to show the next one. Okay, so we'll let the scene manager know that we're going to send a message called show next beacon. I'm going to copy that to make sure that we name our function the same thing as that. And then what I'll do is I'll say this dot get component mesh renderer dot enabled is equal to false. So this guy just got hit by the player. We'll turn him off right after we send the message to the scene manager, letting him know to show the next beacon. Here's our scene manager. Scene manager is going to have a function, private void show next beacon. And what this dude is going to do is he's going to turn he knows that the light will be off for the top of the stack. So he'll ask the question, if this dot the beacon stack dot count is greater than 0, as long as my stack is not empty. Okay, then I'll go ahead and say this dot the beacon stack. Does pop give me the actual game object? It does. So dot pop. So I'll pop that game object off the stack. Dot get component. Mesh renderer. Dot enabled is equal to true. Okay. So a beacon knows when he's been hit. He turns himself off. He yells at the scene manager, show the next beacon. The scene manager comes in, grabs the next beacon from the top of the stack, assuming there is another beacon. It turns its mesh renderer on. So let's see how this guy works. And then what we need to do here is at the end of this, just to get the ball rolling, we need to say this dot show next beacon. So after we've initialized everything, we're going to go ahead and tell the scene manager to show the first beacon, right? All right, so there's the first beacon. Did I actually hit it? Let's see. We're not colliding with it. He should not have to be a rigid body in order to collide with him.
It has to be a rigid body to collide.
That's not true. I think what we actually need to do is, instead of a box collider, let me test something here. I'm going to remove the box collider from these guys. And I'm going to add a mesh collider. And set that guy up as a trigger. Mesh colliders will work with non-rigid bodies. It's possible box colliders only work with rigid bodies. So let me just click on one of these dudes. Let's zoom in on him. And okay. Where's the box collider on this dude? So there's my beacons with all their mesh colliders. You know what? A box collider should have been fine on that. I'm going to put it back. Set them up as triggers. That's fine. Then I'm going to go to my first person controller. First person. Oh, this dude's still locked. So we actually never set those guys up as triggers. We just kept messing with stuff on our scene manager. Scene manager, he's not even in he's an invisible object. So, okay. So all our beacons have box colliders now, and they're set up as a trigger. Scene manager does not need a box collider, so we'll take that off. Okay, he doesn't need one of those. He also does not need the beacon script. These dudes do need the beacon script, though, and I don't think they have it. So they need the beacon script. And they all need to know about the scene manager. Okay. So every one of our beacons now knows about the scene manager. Our scene manager is a normal thing. A beacon is a box collider, and our first person controller has the character controller. He's a rigid body. Does the character controller have the collider built into it? Let's find out.
teleport to you. I think it teleport to you.
I'm going to make them a lot taller just so I don't have to worry about the...
You make the box collider taller.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted him to get hit. So I just made a giant box collider for him.
Definitely make Bacon 127.
Yeah, it teleport to you, see?
No, I'm moving.
I mean, it is a trigger, so box light isn't just
Let's just make sure we're getting in here. We're not. I really thought these guys could be box colliders. Just to test this real quick, if I go ahead and add a rigid body to these, gravity should be okay with them. Oh, it's they were actually below the ground, so they did impact. I'm not hitting it. All right. I think we need to add a box collider to our dude.
I think that's
First person character. He has a camera. He has an audio listener.
I think we got the box collider to the...
Yeah, I don't think this dude actually has a box collider. So let's add a box collider to this dude. Let's edit that collider. Yeah, he has a capsule collider. Where did that come from?
From the...
Is that the character controller?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, he's probably viewing, but we don't see it. I think we need the box collider to collider. Capture collider install.
Well, we don't need him to know when he's collided with something. We just need the other guy to. Oh, it's happening. We're getting in there now. Ah, okay, yeah. So our first person controller here, it's untagged because I tagged the game object as our scene manager must be the player.
Oh.
Yeah. So let's untag him. That guy's now a player. He should now be able to hit it. Well, he is hitting it.
Is it popping up in the log?
Huh?
Is it popping up in the log?
Yeah, it says here. And we should be getting into here. Let's make sure that's popping up. Yeah, so that's not popping up. Let's just print out what the tag is. Okay. All right, it's bumping into as untagged. So that must mean that this main camera, here's our player. So the dude that's hitting him is untagged, which means that our player is actually not hitting him. Okay, I think he's getting hit by the plane. I'm going to just set the tag to finish for the plane. Yeah, so it's the plane that's colliding with him. And that's okay, because he should still be able to be triggered by something else. So we are not hitting him. So then I guess I will add a box collider onto our player here. Why isn't it hitting?
I think you line up too high on the first person material.
You think my collider box is too high on him?
Yeah, it doesn't. Wow.
Oh, I see. So what we can do is we can set his collider, set its height to, all right, that should not be too high. That should be, that's a swath. That beacon is still a rigid body, but I don't think he needs to be a rigid body. I want him to be a box collider. That's a trigger. Am I really floating over him like this? And these beacons have on trigger enter on them.
Do we need to to put it on the order that game object. To understand the game object is being tagged.
On trigger enter should work for that. So they all have box colliders. Right now the trigger's off. I just turned it back on. Oh, wait a minute. It looks like the center 0, 0. Oh no, it's fine. I was thinking that they each had the same box collider. No, they all have a big box collider.
Do we need to tag the object, the game object, to the name of region?
No, I mean we should still see it coming into the on trigger enter. We should see just the tag printing.
Yeah.
Whoever he collided with. What's this error coming from? I don't have any Steam VR stuff in here, do I? Turn nav mesh.
Yeah, you ran into my problem for 4 weeks ago. I have the same problem with you. Can't collide with stuff.
Well, what I want to know is why is this OpenVR error popping up? I don't have any VR stuff in here.
Oh, also, I think I know what was causing the issue with no autocomplete a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So it was telling me, doing the exact same thing, that I had a mixture of Unix and Windows line endings.
Okay.
So
I've seen that before, yeah.
Making them all the same, I got autocomplete.
All right, I'm going to turn off virtual reality supported here just to see if I can get that error to go away. No, it's still there. Oh, hold on.
Now you can see
Okay, so that was not the issue. I'm going to leave that off for now anyways, because when we go to add VR support with VRTK, we're going to be doing it differently. Why isn't this guy colliding? He should not need this box collider because he already has a capsule collider. He knows how to collide with stuff because that's his collider right there. This character controller. All right, so we made him taller and fatter. So let's make him taller and fatter. He should be able to run into this box. Seems kind of ridiculous.
Yes, that's probably like 4 weeks ago. Can we go to the script again?
Well, hold on. I mean, the script shouldn't matter if these beacons are rigid bodies.
See, tap, untap. Oh, it's not interact with the character. It's interact with the plane.
So you think it's hitting?
The plane. It's not hitting the player.
Well, but it's still hitting over and over again. So if we hit put the plane in here, and let's just make this guy animal. Yeah, it's hitting animal over and over again, but it's never hitting something else.
How about you move it up a little bit?
That's what I'm going to do. All right, so they are all off the ground now, so they should not be colliding with the ground. Okay.
It doesn't interact with the player.
Let me click on the player. I want to see how high the player is. Okay. The player is at height 2.67. That's how tall he is right now. 2.67 is his height. So these things need to reach up at least 2.67 in order to get hit. All right. That should definitely get hit. Now the box colliders are above.
Yeah, not interact with the player. Actually, oh, I know. Actually, in the script, you have to add another game object to throw the player into it. I think it's something new change on Unity, right? So,
What do you mean?
On the script to add the beacon, you have to put the game object, put the player in it.
So the first-person controller can't actually collide with things?
I don't know. I think so, but
I don't think, because we did that in our first.
You did it on the first screen, but at the home, if I want to collide something, I have to create a game object and throw the player in it. Even though for first people collide or something.
Well, let me add the box collider back here to this guy now. I don't think this definitely shouldn't be a trigger. Everything about our algorithm here works fine except the stupid collider.
Yeah, I know, but try to add the game object is called player and throw the first person to draw in it.
All right, so you want to create an empty game object called player.
No, in the script, a public variable of the game object. On the script
Yeah.
of the beacon, you throw the you say put the game object of player, and then
if like the first person collided is.
But nothing's colliding. Literally nothing's colliding right now. So I mean, the problem's not that it doesn't know about the player. It's not colliding with anything. It was colliding with the ground when I had it sitting closer to the ground. Let me try something here. I'm going to give the here's the player's body. And that guy already has a Vox Collider on it. Throw the body out in front of the. Oh, it's actually not even at 0, 0. He is a child of that, isn't he? Yeah, so his. Okay, that's interesting. All right, so that's like his belly. Well, what happened to it? It's like our player is in a different place than we expect him to be in. Okay, so here's the actual. Yeah, do you see his collider is like he's all spread apart.
Does he have the body?
So there's the actual player.
You reset the component.
Why is there's that part of it? All right, so the issue is that the camera is sitting over his shoulder, which seems reasonable enough. But if that's going to be the case, then we need to move it back here. And then we need to move his body. If I just want to kind of see so that's kind of like his gut sticking out in front.
Don't we need to move the camera out there?
Well, no, the camera sits back behind him.
Yeah, because last time the packets go together when you move the body on the.
Well, the camera sits behind him because it's a first person. It's for a first person shooter. So it's riding over his shoulder. So it's watching him in front of him. We just don't have a representation of our dude. So this is a game object. All right. This game object has this big point of view thing here. Here's the actual first person character that has a camera associated with it. I'm going to make the body a child of that camera. And then I'm going to reset the position of the body to the camera. And then I'm going to make the body move forward. Okay. That'll make the body go down some.
Then you feel my pain for weeks ago. I do this all day.
Yeah, I actually think this is an organization of the first-person controller. I think where we thought the thing was hitting, I think that we're not colliding because where we think we're running over the box isn't where we're actually running over the box.
Been painful for a week for me on this part only.
Okay. So now, that is our gut. There we go. All right, so we are definitely hitting it now because our gut is untagged. So now we go to our body. We'll actually have this guy be tagged as player. Let's go ahead and untag this dude. So our body is actually the player. So there's our gut. Now player hit it. And yep, the second one. Oh, we have a pretty big box collider right now, so that's why they're all popping up. So hold on, let me fix the box collider. We're gonna take it off of this dude. We'll go to the body. Okay, so there's the first one. There's the next one. There's the next one. There's the next one. There's the next one. And now we're out of beacons. That makes sense? So the whole problem was how the first-person controller is organized. The first-person controller is meant to be, what is that, third-person perspective? But no, that's not right. It's supposed to be as if it's riding over your shoulder. The problem is that the hitbox for the physical body of the player was significantly farther forward in that container than the camera. So when you move the camera back so you can see a box in front of it, you actually don't ride over that box because your hitbox is on the other side of the box. Because there's this giant gap between the camera and the actual cube. So now back to the question that you asked, what if we had to keep the beacons? We have not lost our beacons. We just turned them off. So under what circumstance here would you want your beacons to come back?
Let's see. Let's say that you have like a list of places you want to go. You know, you have the barn, the house, and the shop. Well, you're at the shop, so you turn the shop beacon off. So now the other two are on. Go to the barn. Well, now the shop beacon comes back on because you're away from the shop.
Oh, okay. So you're thinking almost like a map.
Kind of, yeah.
So you have, if you're at the barn, you want that not to show up on the map because that's your current location. You don't want that beacon to be in your way.
Exactly.
When you leave there, you leave the proximity of the beacon. So I guess then what you would do is, I would set that up differently because for you, you're not really trying to take them on a path. You know, you're not saying, okay, here's 5 beacons in a row I want you to follow to get to a destination. Instead, you're saying, here's 5 different places on my map. Now, you can tell that they're places because you have a beacon there. You kind of want to give them some sort of visual that a destination exists over there, right? Then once you get to that guy, you want that guy to turn off. So what you would do is you would say you would have probably a pretty big box collider for it, and as you entered it, on trigger enter, you would turn it off. Then on trigger exit, you would turn it there because there's two different functions. Yeah. So you would turn the renderer back on. So now it's not a matter of your beacons knowing about each other. It's just if you're in proximity of a beacon. The other thing you can do is you can have all the beacons in your scene manager and have your player in your scene manager, and then use the vector 3 distance thing. And on fixed update or something like that. I mean, this maybe is a little bit inefficient, but it would work. On fixed update, just check the distance between the current player transform position and each beacon, and if it's less than X, turn the beacon off. Otherwise, turn the beacon on.
Right.
That would be a little bit.
I remember you only need the on trigger access. You don't need the on trigger enter, because it's like last time I did something toilet plus just getting to the button.
Well, yeah, but you would need, if he wants the beacon to go off once he gets there, he would need on trigger enter.
Oh, yeah.
Because he wants it to go off when he gets there, and then when he leaves, he wants it to go back on.
Yeah. Right. Because if I'm doing something in this area, I don't want this beacon shining and distracting.
Yeah. So the correct way is the on trigger enter, on trigger exit.
Okay.
The hack way that will work is constantly keep track of how far you are from different things. And the reason why you might want to do that, depending on, I'm kind of thinking about it like, what's the game? Elder Scrolls.
Right.
The closer you are to a destination, the kind of the bigger little triangle thing is. The shield thing, I don't know, whatever it's trying to do, the destination kind of beacon thing. Yeah. So with that in mind, you could actually maybe change either the scale or how bright a beacon is, depending on your current distance to it. So that you could have perceived where's the next place to go. Well, what makes the most sense based on travel time or something like that, if that made sense for you.
Right.
All right. So does that make some sense?
Yeah.
All right. And this fixes your problem now. And actually, the big problem here is a problem we're not actually going to run into when we do the VR TK stuff, because it'll be different than the first person controller.
But we're gonna test on Vive.
We're gonna test on both. We have both of them set up in the other room. Everybody's gonna have access to this room. So when we actually go to do it, we'll make sure you know how to test it. You'll be able to swipe in and use the 2 development machines we have back there. For testing, but VRTK also comes with a simulator. It's not very good, but it does let you test VR without having to come to a VR headset. Right, so it's better than nothing, and it makes it so that you don't have to develop one way and then switch to another thing. With that in mind, let's talk about some of the challenges with. So any other questions, any other things you want me to cover before I talk about VRTK some? Because I'm not going to see you for 2 weeks after today. So if there's a bug or something that's going to help you progress, let's focus on that. We can always talk about VRTK next time. Go ahead.
I was working on repairing my camera, but I didn't understand how it does. I had 2 cameras that were rotating completely over nothing, and to release, I wanted to turn the cameras 45 degrees just this way. I didn't figure out how that.
Okay, so you're still using a first-person controller. So you just have one camera?
With one camera.
Okay, so you want your guy to look up like that? You want that to automatically happen?
Yes. I want the camera to face on the ground first, and then above. Yeah. And it might. So will that happen only once?
Yeah. Okay. So some challenges with this. So one thing is going to be you kind of so the camera is the camera the perspective of your player, or is it something that is your camera a fixed camera that doesn't move? So in your scene, the scene where you're talking about this, is this something that the person actually, your player is going to be looking down and then is going to be forced to look up? Is that how it's going to work? Or are you kind of playing out a scene where the person's just going to watch it?
So I have another screen that when a person enters, he has the accessibility to turn around, move around, and check the things around. But also at the back end, there's a video playing that shows the cycle of day and night. So while he's moving around, he experiences the day and also the darkness.
Okay.
So similarly, I wanted this to happen in such a way. So I wanted to deliver a message depicting this rotation.
Okay.
So I don't know if
but is the rotation, I mean, you're saying you want to rotate the camera. So is this rotation effectively having the player look up?
I think I should be doing that. I will be doing that because all I want to show is what creating an expanse to separate the water and calling it sky. So, and also, yeah, so this one scene, I thought I might do that way.
So one issue is going to be when you bring it into VR, but even with the first-person controller, the player gets full control over their head.
Yeah.
So if I have a VR helmet on, I get to choose to look up, right? You know, that kind of thing. So typically, you're not going to want to rotate the camera. You're going to want to rotate the object or the world around the person. You know, so if I'm standing there looking forward and the room tips or something, you know, you can rotate other objects relative to the player. But the player is going to have control of their head and be able to turn stuff. So I guess I don't. So your ultimate goal. So let's just think about what you're trying to accomplish. So forget about the idea of rotating the camera for a second.
You can rotate the light direction, like.
Okay, so the issue is you have something that's in the sky and you want it to be invisible at first, and then you want their attention to come.
So that, okay, so
Light.
maybe I do a camera instead of light.
Yeah.
Did I say that? Okay, so I had directional light which I duplicated another way and make sure they faced each other.
Yep.
And then we rotated. I rotated in such a way that it depicts the light and the dark. So now I wanted to do it with a single camera, but
Single light.
yeah, single light.
Gotcha. Okay. So you have. What are you depicting with the light and darkness? What's the thing that's lit up sometimes and not lit up other times?
In the first scene, the light was the day and the darkness was the night.
Okay.
So that has ended, and now I just want to show that God separated the waters and the sky exists.
Okay, so you want that to become illuminated.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically speaking, does it need to? Why not just have a light on it that makes it look illuminated? You know, point a light at it. Have a directional light that points at it that makes it look illuminated, and then disable the light until you're ready to show it. I mean, you don't need to rotate anything. You just throw the light up there. You know, it's like having a light bulb, and then when you're ready to show it, turn the light on.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So just disable that light. So the light, you'll have the light, the light component dot enabled will be false. And then when you want to turn it on, you'll set it to true. And now that light will shine on it again.
In the area that shows the sky.
Yeah, so you'll place that light exactly where you want it. So here, just like as an example. Here's our last beacon, and what I'm actually going to do is we're going to add a light to him. All right, so we'll put a point light on him. Okay, and we're actually going to change the color of this light to make it kind of a And then let's turn the intensity up to like a 5, something like that. Okay, so very bright light, right? Now notice that light is over there, we can see it. Okay, now what we want to do is we only want that light to pop up when, so pretend that's the sky. We only want to illuminate that once we're actually over there. So we happen to know that that last dude is actually a light. It has a light on him. So we're going to take that point light. We're going to come into our script here, and we can do this on our scene manager. And I'll go ahead and create a public variable, public light. Just call this guy the light. And then down here by default, we'll say this dot the light dot enabled is equal to false. So we'll turn that light off. So then we'll go ahead and connect that light up. So that's on the scene manager. There's our light. Make sure I have this guy saved. All right, so now by default it should not be there. All right, so we don't see that light anywhere. So now whenever you get to the part where you want to turn the light on, so I've hit beacon, I just happen to know it happens to be the very last beacon. So if I come into my script here, when we say show next beacon, as long as the count is greater than 0, I'm going to pop something, but I'm going to ask the question first, if this dot the beacon stack dot count, if that's equal to 1, then we're going to say this dot the light dot enabled is equal to true. So we'll go ahead and pop that light on, bringing attention to that very last beacon. So it's off initially, still off, still off, still off. There, it came on. Because now we wanted to bring attention to that. So whatever the event preceding that makes you want to bring attention to the separation, have that event be what turns the light on. Does that help? Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right, so let's spend a few minutes talking about the challenge of VR. Are we cool with just like going for another 20, 25 minutes or so, getting all the VR background story out, and then just calling it quits instead of taking a break now and coming back? Would you rather do that just to get it over with?
Yeah, but now and coming back.
But you want a break now?
Oh, no.
No, just do it now and then take our 20-minute break at the end, right? Leave 20 minutes early?
Yeah.
Okay, that works for me too. I'm exhausted. So let's talk about VR then.
Yeah.
So what I want to do here.
I read it on my 486.
Actually, what's interesting here is do I have PowerPoint on here? I don't. I'm so used to having that. Okay. Well, so I'll just talk about it out loud then. So we have a couple of issues. So and it's even going to get more complicated now. So we really have 3 different types of VR, or at least 2 different types of VR. Let's call it, we have mobile VR, and we have, let's just call it professional VR. All right. The third type I mentioned is something called mixed reality. How many of you have heard of mixed reality? Okay, so we have 3 things. We have VR, we have AR, if we're talking about technologies, which is augmented reality. Then we have mixed reality in the middle. So what's AR? Let's just get that out of the way first, since that's not what we're focusing on. What is augmented reality?
So basically, you can see the people wearing it.
Projecting.
It throws stuff on top of what we don't see.
Okay. So augmented reality does what it says. It augments our actual reality. We're dealing with the real world here. And the way augmented reality is going to be experienced mostly over the next year, let's say, this is kind of the up and coming thing on mobile devices, is going to be through your mobile phone and the camera. You know, we do have augmented reality devices. For instance, we have a Microsoft HoloLens down there, which is a headset you put on, and you're seeing the real world. You're looking out of a visor, and then what it does is it has a little projector thing in there that augments what you're seeing. It's drawing stuff on the real world. Now, that's going to have some applications, but I think where we're really going to see inroads in augmented reality over the next year is going to be in mobile. Apple, with their iOS 11, released AR Kit, so kind of an SDK for working with augmented reality stuff. And on the flip side, Android has something called Core AR, or AR Core. I don't remember which of the two it is, but one of those two, which is their equivalent to AR Kit. So you're going to see a big move there. So for right now, let's just throw augmented reality to the side. It's really for, right now, if we talk in a year, we're probably going to have a whole lot more to say about augmented reality. Right now, it's kind of, we're in the situation where the solutions for augmented reality are kind of maybe kitschy, but like as an interesting example that I use pretty often when I talk about AR, is I say, let's say we wanted to put a big screen TV up on the wall over there. Well, I might hold my phone up and show them the camera, and I might pick 2 or 3 different big screen TVs and see what's the biggest one that'll fit, right? And actually see what that will look like in my actual room. Beneficial, but you could also accomplish the same thing maybe with a tape measure or a poster or something like that, but this makes life easier. I suspect, though, that what we'll see over the next year, now that these kits are in front of the developers, is you're going to have a whole bunch of creative people coming up with solutions that we're not considering right now for augmented reality. So I think things will be a lot more exciting 6, 8, 12 months from now when we see what all these different people who just have toys in front of them can start figuring out what to do with it. Okay, so we'll shove that to the side because that's not what we're focused on. We're focused on virtual reality related to mixed reality. So what's the difference there? When I say mixed reality, what am I talking about? Well, actually, let's start with VR. That's the easy one. What is virtual reality?
Basically, in the virtual world, you can see outside world. Okay,
so the opposite of augmented reality, right? We are completely immersed. We are not seeing real life. Okay, we are in a complete virtual environment, and we move our head, so it's all about delivering a perspective. Okay, where our eyes, let's say, are the camera. Okay, so that's the perspective, and that's why making the jump to VR in our 3D worlds isn't as big as it might seem like, because all we're doing is we're attaching the camera to our head. And instead of having the our first-person controller controlled by our keyboard and stuff, we're allowing inputs to come in through this headset and these hand controls that allow your dude to somehow move through the world, by pushing the button or something like that on a controller, and your guy is dancing through the world. So that's what virtual reality is. Now, what's mixed reality?
People mix like hybrid.
Okay, that's the tough one. So you say, what would you say?
You say it's virtual reality, but it also has the cameras to look out at the things around you to know what's there and incorporate that with the virtual.
Okay, now that would make sense. That's what it would seem that mixed reality is. But if you look at the current implementations of mixed reality and kind of the direction they're going, I feel like Microsoft has coined this phrase mixed reality, but it really doesn't mean what you think it means. Although maybe eventually it will. Maybe eventually we'll see a merging of the two. But punchline, so what he said, I think, in the big scheme of things is correct. The most correct part about it is that the headsets have external cameras on them. Typically, it's 2 cameras. Okay, because several of the VR headsets actually do have 1 camera for to be able to do some level of augmented, like don't bump into stuff if you don't want to take the helmet off, that kind of thing. But most of the mixed reality helmets have 2 cameras on them. And what they're really trying to do, so this is where I think that the name mixed reality kind of starts failing, is they're trying to get away from the requirement of having these sensors set up in the room. So right now, if you use the two, let's call it professional level VR solutions, either the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive, we have both of them set up in that room over there, they have a requirement of sensors. So the Vive is probably the harder one to set up. It's the more time-consuming one to set up, or it's the more permanent setup. So when you set up the HTC Vive, you have two sensors, one that goes behind you and then one that goes catty corner from it. And it could be like 14 feet away and the maximum space size. And what it does is it's creating a walkable space for you. And keeps track. It's tracking your headset, but it's also tracking your controllers. All right. And this gives you something called room scale. And what room scale effectively says is when you're in VR, it gives you kind of this fake fence around you that you can kind of see as you start getting close to it. You draw in your room, but it allows you to physically move in the space. Now, keep in mind, the space can only be like a maximum of, let's say, 14 by 14. That's if you're lucky, but, that's the maximum. So it's not like you can make it in an entire building, although there has been some experiments already with people who have networked a whole bunch of Vive sensors together, like in a gymnasium, and basically created like a 400 by 400 foot but it's still not infinite, right? So that's still not going to give us the ability to actually walk in virtual space in real space. I'm not sure why we'd want to, but so my feeling is that that kind of application is cool, but I'm not sure that we actually need that much space. So being able to be, if you have a 5 foot by 5 foot space versus a 10 by 10 foot space, that probably doesn't drastically change the things that you can do in that space. Really what you want to be able to do is you want to have enough space around you you can kind of lean over and pick stuff up or reach for things, that kind of stuff. Because what you do run into problems with is, let's say there was an apple on the table here. Well, if I had a big enough space around me, I can walk over to that apple. If it's kind of close enough where I can physically move to it, I can walk over there, I can grab the apple, and I'm interacting with that object. Now, let's say it's 50 feet from me. Well, I don't have a 50 by 50 foot space, so I'm going to have to get over there in the proximity of the apple first, right? So, we can teleport through the world, or we can just, hit the button and we kind of just start driving through like a first person shooter, kind of get close to the apple, and then we can finish walking over to it and grabbing the last piece, take the final step ourselves with precision. Okay. So when you deal with the Vive has, let's call it, good room scale. So the Vive was designed originally with room scale in mind. The alternative guy, the Oculus Rift, supports room scale. The default, so when you first buy the Rift, when it first came out, actually, it came with one sensor because the Rift actually was just the headset. About a year later, it came out with the hand controls. And the hand controls come with another sensor. So if you buy an Oculus Rift today, you usually get it as the kit. So what you would get is you get the headset, you get the hand controls, and you get two sensors. And what that effectively does is it gives you, you put the two sensors kind of in front of you, facing you this way. And so now it's tracking the hand controls, it's tracking your headset, and you can get a level of room scale as far as those two cameras can see you. But you have to keep in mind, though, that when you turn around, when you turn around, it's not tracking the headset anymore. So it's having to fake what you're doing. So if you want to get true room scale out of the Oculus Rift, you actually have to buy the optional third sensor that you run behind you. So now in order to accomplish the similar thing that you can accomplish with the Vive, it takes three sensors instead of the two. All right. But bottom line is you can accomplish some level of room scale with both of them. You have the hand controls with both of them. And we'll call them relatively close competitors. All right. Now, we have this old guy that had kind of fallen to the wayside and now is starting to come back. That's mobile VR. So how many of you have ever heard of something called Google Cardboard? All right. So what is Google Cardboard?
It's just a Cardboard with the
most effective VR or most cost effective VR implementation to date. Right?
Okay. Yeah. So Google Cardboard the idea is that it's for mobile phones. And, what is VR? VR is effectively two different pictures being shown in your phone. If you've ever launched a VR app on your phone without it being in VR, you actually see the phone showing two different screens. One for the left eye, one for the right eye. And what Google Cardboard is it started off as this little kit. It was like $5. Yeah. And it was cardboard with two little lenses that came in it. And it came in a little kit with some directions, and you folded it the way it needed to be folded. You put put tape on it to get it set, and you stick your phone in this thing, and you shut the thing, and you put it on. It's not comfortable, but you can get the sense of VR for $5. Yeah. Okay. Well, then that kind of evolved into some places came out with Google Cardboard compliant headsets, because Google Cardboard was a little bit more than just saying, here's the headset. Google Cardboard also has this inclusion of this idea of how do I manipulate my VR experience? How do I hit buttons on the screen when I don't have physical access to the screen of my phone? And it's done with this like magnet thing over here on the side for Google Cardboard. So you can go on to Amazon and you can buy what look like nice, VR headsets that kind of look in the same realm as like the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive. Not quite at that quality, but in the same ballpark, significantly closer than a piece of cardboard. And you can get them for like $15. You can get a decent VR headset for $15 that works with Google Cardboard apps. Still pretty cost effective and way more comfortable. Well, then you had the first guy that really is. So what would you say is the problem with Google Cardboard? I mean, what's good about it is it's cheap, so you could try it out. Okay, but it didn't really take off. Why not? What's the problem with something like Google Cardboard? How many of you have used it before? So 2.5 people have used Google Cardboard? Huh?
Who's the half?
Well, actually, I guess I should say a fourth, because Joseph is technically half to begin with.
Okay.
And then he only paid. No. Hold on. I got to explain the math here. So because you're smaller, okay, you start off a full as a half, but you only put your hand halfway up, so it's really a quarter. So it's 1 1/4.
Well, and then we've also got Google Cardboard Plastic.
Well, okay, let's get to that in a second. So let's just, all right, hold on. When you're talking about Google Cardboard Plastic, what you're talking about is Google Cardboard compliant things made of plastic.
No, I'm talking about the April Fool's joke.
Oh, okay.
But the thing, you can go to the Macy, you can go to Changing Man and can buy the doggo for $10.
This guy.
Yeah, I got you.
Google Cardboard.
No, so I just want to take us down this path here. So what's wrong with Google Cardboard? Why isn't everybody today at that price point? Because what we've been complaining about for the last 1.5 years or so with the professional headsets, I mean, how many of you in here own either an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive? Okay.
I told you I'm a pro.
Okay. Well, no, but he's been doing work with me on VR. Okay, so he's done some of that stuff. But in general, I mean, so if we use that as a representative, we are technology users in this room, right? Okay, so one of you has a virtual reality setup out of a group of technology users. Now, if we were at the CS get-together earlier today, let's say we took all the students in the department. All right, how many of them have a HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift at home? How many would you guess?
5 at most.
It's going to be less than that. You might still have the one hand up, right? Okay. So punchline is these things are expensive, right? So that's the biggest complaint now at the professional level. They're too expensive. Okay. The Rift is $400. The Vive is $600, but you're not done. It takes a good machine. You need to have a $1,500 computer to drive that $600 headset. Yeah, you're not out the door at $400, right? You're nowhere near.
You
So
need a whole new computer.
Huh?
You had to get a whole new computer to do this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it's mostly GPU driven. It's mostly the graphics card. And because I've primarily been a Macintosh-based user, not necessarily because I like Mac better, but it's what I have Windows and the Mac on it, so I can have one machine that's easy to carry around that I could dual boot. But Macs are not good about upgrading hardware. You know, you get this nice iMac and you get this nice MacBook Pro. Fine, it's beautiful looking. Okay, but whatever it came with the day you bought it, that's what it's going to have forever. So it's not functional for what I needed it to be. But so you're right. I mean, even before this, I had to get a new GPU for my Windows machine at home. But so the point is, the big argument has been cost effectiveness, right? Well, what's the argument? I mean, why isn't everybody walking around with one of these $10 nice Google Cardboard compliant headsets? Is cost the problem? No, we could all scrounge up $10 for a good one, okay? Or you can probably find somebody who will hand you the crappy cardboard one for. They might even pay you $1 to take it off their hands, so something like that. So cost isn't the problem. What's the problem? What's keeping all of you? Because how many of you have a Google Cardboard headset? Oh, see, I'm training them. We got our full 1.5 hands there. All right. Okay, so we got one more person who joined the club there. When we went from the $2,000 investment to the $5 investment, what's the problem with Google Cardboard?
What supports it?
Huh?
What supports it? Software-wise.
Oh, every cell phone.
Yeah, but like what apps?
But the designer and the gorgeous of the pictures doesn't.
Okay, so your argument is that the apps for it, while there might be many of them and you can get them on both Android and iOS, are relatively low quality?
Well, and also just I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Personally.
See, I would personally make the argument that the best uses for VR actually is entertainment.
Just one movie.
Yeah. So, for example, I watched so when new technology comes out, who do they hit first? They hit the enthusiasts, right? That's not the direction I'm going. I watched the show, the Orville, last night, but I wanted to get them to the punchline. Okay, but so when new technology comes out and it's expensive, who is willing to spend money on expensive computer hardware and accessories?
The people who are crazy about it.
We have a whole room of programmers here, and we had one hand up, right? Okay, it's gamers.
Disposable ink.
Right. Well, not even that. I mean, my dad's got plenty of disposable income. He's not running VR. You can say, oh, well, he's too old. Well, my brother.
Rich gaming programmers.
Could be.
Yeah.
But actually, even go beyond that. Take the rich out, because do you think somebody who is a diehard gamer, the name that comes to mind, how many of you knew Nick Schumacher? Just graduated last year. Die-hard gamer. This guy has like a professional streaming channel. Okay, so I think he streams Destiny and Destiny 2. He's good. Okay, and he has like sponsors for his channel. So this guy is a die-hard gamer.
Well,
he is not rich. But he has, he actually wears out his PlayStations and his Xboxes. They wear out. He has to get replacements for them because they actually become overused. So he is somebody who is serious enough about gaming that it's worth that investment to them, right? He has a really good GPU in his computer at home. He has a 1080 in his computer at home, and that is a very expensive graphics card. That's an $800 graphics card. He can't afford $800. He chose not to eat so he can get that graphics card. It was important to him because of what he does. So it's that group of people that will adopt new technology first, right? So what you've really seen happen in VR is they've attacked the gamer movement first. So when we think about VR right now, a lot of times what we're thinking about is VR games.
Yeah.
But I don't actually think the killer application for VR is games.
I agree.
You know, yeah, and you could look at evidence of this. I mean, I think VR games are cool, okay? But how many of you have ever played a Nintendo Wii?
Oh, no.
Most of us have at some point played the Nintendo Wii, did Wii bowling or something like that, right? Now, when the Nintendo Wii first came out, it was interesting, right? A lot of people wanted it. It's like, oh, our kids will get moving and stuff like that. Gamers don't want to move, right? Nintendo Wii is more for like party games. People play it when they want to hang out with their friends for an hour or something like that. Now, if you're like a diehard gamer, so you're the person you don't want to put pants on. Okay, you're going to just sit on the couch. Okay, you're going to sit on the couch for 17 straight hours playing this game. You don't want to move, right? So while it sounds good on paper, like, oh, it's so realistic. No!
Who wants to do that for 17 hours straight?
I mean, there was a game when I first started working with VR. There was this game that I grabbed, and it was an interesting game. It was a lot of puzzle solving type stuff. I just decided one weekend I was going to beat this game in VR. Okay, and it was probably about a 12-hour playthrough. I did it almost in all one day. I probably got about halfway through I probably got about half of the hours into the game one day, but probably 2/3 of the content the second day. It's called, I'll have to look up the name of it. It's like a medieval type thing where you're shooting arrows and stuff and killing skeletons and solving puzzles to get through this dungeon. Vanishing Realms. Vanishing Realms is the name of it. Good game. You could tell they spent a lot of time on it, but it's something that would be in the ballpark of what we maybe could make. It didn't have amazing graphics. They took reasonable graphics that were out there and they put it together, but it was good for early days of VR. I was sore the next day. I mean, my muscles were sore. I actually had an injury because, you're fighting these skeletons. I was swinging the sword around. I banged into something. I was hurt. Okay, so it's cool at first, but then the newness wears off, right? We don't necessarily want to move that much. We mostly want to do VR while we're sitting with minimum movement. So I really think the killer application for VR is actually entertainment. So how many of you have ever watched Netflix? More than 1.5 of us, right? All right. So now we've gotten pick your favorite streaming television type service. Pretty much, yeah. We pretty much have everybody in, right? Okay, everybody's done that. Well, now, how many of you watch it on a TV screen that's 55 inches or bigger? 40 inches. What's the smallest TV we have in here? Who watches it on a 20-inch TV or smaller? That's my TV. That's your TV. Okay. So you're watching it on a 15-inch screen or is that a 13? You're watching, so your TV is a 13-inch screen. Okay. And that's what you watch Netflix on. Well,
I had the free 1 month trial.
Yeah. Now I steal it.
Free 1 month trial that you got for multiple months.
You got to keep changing email addresses.
Yeah.
I still have email addresses to spend on that, but I don't have the time to devote.
Oh, okay, I got you.
I'm holding out.
Gotcha. Okay, so punchline is this. So let's just use Netflix as an example. What if you could watch Netflix on a movie on a 100-foot screen like you have in a movie theater while sitting in a broom closet? Because do any of you live in mansions? We all have little places, right? Okay, I've been at Edwin's place. Edwin lives in a place with like 9 other people, and it's like a 1.5 bedroom home. Okay, we don't live in mansions. We live in normal, probably most of you probably live in small places, right? Okay, a couple of you live in the dorms. Okay, that's really small. Well, what if you could watch Netflix on a movie screen in your dorm room?
Oh, that'd be good.
That's great. You don't even need a TV then. Your TV is right here. That's the killer applications for VR. What about sports? How many of you like watching sports? Let's say fake football. There's probably soccer there. Maybe soccer, maybe probably cricket. Cricket.
Croquet.
They are different sports. I learned that.
Yeah, the sport that you throw around and then you run with it.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, cricket's it's a made up sport. They shouldn't play it. You know how? Okay, you know.
Not as bad as curling.
Well, no, this is actually where it becomes interesting. You know how in the United States we've started turning the corner and we start thinking baseball is kind of stupid?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cricket is like the international baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually look at the population of people who watch cricket versus like the population, because we here view like the NFL is huge, right? Football is huge. Way more people watch cricket than NFL. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah, cricket is huge, and it's not just in India.
Australia. England.
Okay. But in any case, so here, well, I'll meet you halfway. Let's talk about American football.
Let's talk about something like curling.
Okay, fine.
Huge.
Actually, I'm not even a football fan. Let's talk about tennis.
There.
All right, we'll talk about tennis because I'm a tennis fan. Well, I'm mostly a golf fan. Actually, this would be awesome for golf. But so when I gave a presentation at my church about 6-8 weeks ago, something like that. It was the morning of the Wimbledon finals for tennis, and so whenever that date was. Now, when you're at a tennis stadiums are significantly smaller than basketball stadiums or something like that. So they're not as huge. But if you're in the back row, how big is that tennis ball? Not very big, right? Okay, you're not going to have a real great view. Well, what if you could have the view from like one of the ball kids or the chair umpire?
That'd be great.
That'd be awesome. All it takes is they just have to have a 360-degree camera there. And they can sell the chair umpire seat thousands of times. And then what do? You just put your VR headset on, and now you're the chair umpire watching live streaming of this tennis match. If you want to change your perspective, click a button. Now you're from one of the line judges or something like that. So now you can start experiencing sports from all these different perspectives without putting pants on. Okay, these are killer applications of VR, right? If you're a Packers fan, what if you could watch the Packers game from the perspective of Aaron Rodgers? They come up with a head mount thing and figure out a way for it to not get broken when he gets tackled. But and the whole game, you're watching it as if you are his head.
Well, that would give terrible motion sickness.
You're probably right, but would you still pay to do it? At least once?
Yeah.
Most people would.
I get the free trial.
But you get what I'm saying. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. Okay, so these are really the killer applications of VR. Now, can that be done with Google Cardboard?
No.
It absolutely could. All that is perspective.
Yeah.
Don't we get back with the motion sickness thing? Like, can this, have me look around, I don't know, the Alps or something, have a camera on the Alps, look around, and have that such that I can, quickly turn without getting motion sickness. Not even like moving around right now, just around.
The short answer is the newest phones easily. But you actually don't even need to go back that far.
$60?
Well, I don't know the answer to it for sure. I don't know the answer, but 360-degree video is not nearly as taxing as rendering, frames per second for these because it's been pre-rendered. It's just a large data file, right? So it would come a lot closer to driving something like that than driving a game.
Right.
Is the punchline. So really, the point here is that the killer applications for VR are also the things that are the easiest for our hardware devices to drive in VR. Okay? So this gets back to my question of what's the problem with Google Cardboard? Okay, so kind of crappy interface, right? And you got the little button over there thing. So it's a little bit inconvenient to use. Okay? You mentioned possibly a software library issue. Okay? I think those two, and then we take it to the next level. It really comes, I think it's the mesh between those. So the mobile VR solutions that have been successful up to this point. There's really two of them. Okay, one of them is called Gear VR. It's actually an Oculus product. Okay, it's made by the same people who make the Oculus Rift, but it's made for the Samsung Galaxy phones. Now, it's actually a little bit inconvenient. I have to take my case off and everything. But once I plug it in here, see, when you're using Google Cardboard, the way it works is you launch the app you want to run. Then it tells you, okay, now turn your phone sideways, put it in your Google Cardboard, strap it in, put it on your face, and now you're using it. If you want to switch apps, take the headset off, take this out, close this app, launch the next app you want to try, go in there, put it back in, put it on your head. Not the end of the world, especially if it only cost you $5, but it's not convenient. It's something you messed with for, a night or 2 nights. Maybe you got 2 or 3 hours in with Google Cardboard. You said, oh, that was interesting. And then you don't touch it again. Is that kind of your experience, Joseph? So, so the Google Cardboard really misses out on that whole the whole interface experience of being able to just go into VR for some amount of time. When I put this into the headset for my Gear VR and I shut it, this thing launches Oculus Home. It launches an operating system that looks just like the operating system that launches when you put the Oculus Rift on. Okay, it looks similar to the operating system it launches when you put the Vive on. I put that headset on, and now I can browse. I have a little hand controller thing, but even before they had the hand controllers, you got a little touchpad thing on the side of the helmet here, but it's not the little button. It's more responsive than that, so it's a lot better than the button. But the point is you have an operating system that's functional in VR for you to download new software applications, switch applications, watch 360 videos, whatever it is. You don't have to leave VR to launch the next thing and come back in. It's convenient to use. That makes sense? So what's my inconvenience now? So you have Gear VR is one, and then the competitor, anybody know what the competitor with Gear VR is? The other guy that's doing something similar like that? It's a Google product. So Google Daydream. Yeah, Google Daydream. So let's say they're both doing a good job with that. I've used them both. I think Gear VR is better. But I think that has it's less about the headset and it's more about the library. The Oculus Home is something they've been developing for a while because it's been on the Rift. The other thing I like about Gear VR, but this is more of a personal thing, it's a little bit bigger device, so it fits bigger heads maybe a little bit better. But actually what I like the most about it is, and this is something that I wish the Vive and the Rift had, the Gear VR has a little roller rotating thing up here that allows you to adjust the distance from your eyes the lenses are. So I actually can use it without my glasses. I can dial in my prescription. Make sense? That's pretty convenient. Because when I was spending a whole lot of time in VR, and this is going to be a true story that you're all going to laugh at, I actually was shaving my eyelashes. Because when you go into VR and you have glasses on, the helmet pushes your glasses up against your face. Okay, it fits, it's fine, but I have extra long eyelashes for a male. So my eyelashes were hitting the inside of my glasses, making them dirty while I was in VR. So what's the obvious solution? Computer science, we're problem solvers. I shaved my eyelashes off. And I didn't do it with a tool made for shaving eyelashes off. I did it with one of those hair buzzer things, like this, and it was one that was just wide enough that I wouldn't dig it into my eyeball. And my wife wouldn't help me do it. And I have bad tremors. So I'm here going like this across my face, like bouncing off. It was actually quite funny. So anyways, that's something I like about that.
Do you have video of that?
We don't, but I do have witnesses. And I've done it more than once.
Tremors the reason you didn't just go for contacts?
No, I actually have environmental allergies as well. Not real bad, but my eyes get irritated pretty easily.
I see.
Just over-the-counter Allegra type stuff, but enough that it would be problematic. But in any case, so we're not going to go with Google Cardboard because it's not convenient. Well, I have the Gear VR, and I'm saying, well, that's really good. And once I get my phone into it, I'm all set up, then I'm good for a while if I'm going to use it for a while. But, I got to take my case off, and it kind of sucks. And, we don't want to drop our phone and, whatever, all these things. But also, it's limited. So who can use the Gear VR? Well, only the people who have Samsung phones. And they're newest, they're good ones, right? They're expensive ones. Who can use the Google Daydream? The people have the Google Pixels, and there's like 2 other phones that work with it. A limited number of people. I'm actually very surprised that Apple doesn't have one yet. I feel like they've missed the boat on that. Because now they really have missed that, because what was just announced yesterday, and we've kind of been predicting these were coming for a while, but this was a really big announcement by Oculus yesterday. It was this thing called Oculus Go. All right, let me actually bring this up real quick. I could probably just show you a quick video from Oculus Go. And what Oculus Go is, it's effectively the Gear VR. So the same thing that I'm saying that I use, that I like a lot, that has the nice operating system and stuff like that. But without, it's what?
It's wireless.
That's going to do something. But without the
Wire.
No, without the phone. It has the brains built into it. So it is wireless. You don't need a computer, but it effectively comes with its own computer built into it. You don't need your cell phone to stick into it. It's a standalone headset, and it just works.
But I don't know, it's going to be working on the game that can try like 1080 graphic card.
No, it'll work on anything that the Gear VR works for. It's going to be the Gear VR that people who currently have Samsung Galaxy phones have. It'll be that for everybody. And I'll probably still get one just for the convenience of not having to take my case off and put it into my Gear VR. That's how lazy humans are, right? We're at that point. It's like, well, that's 25 seconds.
Well,
plus, I have it out of the case. I might as well clean the screen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a commitment that's being made there.
Well, sometimes I thought human is gonna be like, if I have a bat that I can, slide on it, and then someone gonna take a bat from me. It's gonna be pretty.
Yeah. So what's going to be interesting here is, because we are moving in this direction now, where mobile VR is kind of making its comeback, but it's kind of detaching from directly connected to the cell phones, and more of a VR, an affordable VR headset. So like the Oculus Go is $200. Okay. Now that's not dirt cheap, but if you were interested in VR, you wanted to have a good VR experience, is $200 all in worth it?
Yep.
You don't have to upgrade your computer. You don't even have to have a computer. $200 and you have VR. That seems promising, right? But now what it means for us is, now we have to start considering VR experiences for those mobile devices where we don't have these hand controls. And then where is mixed reality going to come in? Because something else that Oculus announced, and I'll wrap up here, something else that Oculus announced is another device that actually, it's kind of their competitor in the mixed reality world, where it has cameras on it and it has hand controls that are a lot like the Oculus's hand controls, but you don't need the sensors and you also don't need a computer. Okay, so it's accomplishing those things, detaching from the computer, so you almost get this thing that's like a console. So think about the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One as a VR console. And now you just carry your console with you, you put your helmet on, and it's all self-contained. That makes sense? So it's going to change the way that we have to think about developing for this. So when we come back in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about this tool called VRTK. Because one of the weaknesses, and I'll just spend, let me just give me 30 seconds to talk about this real quick. One of the weaknesses of developing for VR right now is if you want to develop for the Vive, you use this thing called Steam VR. If you want to develop for the Oculus Rift, you use something called the Oculus SDK. Now, if you kind of want to develop for both, the one that's best to use is Steam VR, which kind of knows how to use the Oculus as well, but it's actually made for the Vive. Well, what VRTK does is it gives you a layer that sits on top of that says, okay, if you want your application to work for the Vive and for the Rift and for Gear VR and these 3 or 4 other things, you get all those SDKs, you put them into your project, then you put VRTK on top of that. And you implement all your VR stuff in terms of VRTK, and he makes the decisions of which SDK do I load depending on what headset you have plugged in. Make sense? Yeah. All right, so that's what we'll be looking at. So we'll leave it at that. One thing I do want to announce before I forget, let me get the date real quick so you can write it down. There is a hackathon.
November 11th.
November 11th?
The CS department?
Yes.
Yes.
It's Saturday, November 11th.
So we have credit?
I am requiring it for all my classes. So if you are not able to make, it's a 12-hour hackathon?
Yep, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturday, November 11th. If you have a legitimate reason why you can't go, I'll have an alternate homework assignment that you can do instead of that. All right? Otherwise, I expect you to attend the hackathon, and that's how you'll get your credit.
Yes! Can we count those hours in our log?
We'll be working on a different project.
Yes,
so no. Okay. But I was very disappointed with the turnout at the CS get-together today, so I'm requiring basically everything from my students.
I was at work.
I understand.